All right. Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. My name is Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles. We're worshiping the location of 8916 South Main, and we are sharing the services, the duties, and the premises with our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church. Shout out to both congregations. And we are grateful to be coming before you, and we invite you to come to any and all of our services. There's having service tonight, Friday night, beginning at the 7 p.m. hour. Sunday morning, Sunday school, 10 o'clock, and at 11 o'clock we get ready for morning worship. It usually starts around 11:30. And I tell you, when the Baptists and the Charismatics get together, there's always a shouting in the camp. This offering that we are presenting to you this afternoon is a social justice, social action, a social activist type of a approach to our Christian walk, our church duties, because Jesus said you just can't tell somebody to be warmed and filled, but you don't give them nothing to help them along the way. And he always said, and he also had that beautiful golden rule which says, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. So this broadcast approaches the more, not so much the secular, because Dr. King said we must live so that even we look at a budget as a sacred document. All right, and so we come to you talking about social justice, and that justice must always deal with the environment in which we live, the environment in which we work, the environment in which we shop, the environment in which we grow up, the environment in which we breathe, and all of those aspects of the local environment, and then of course the larger environment, because all of those elements impact the individual. If your water got lead in it, as it does in Flint, it's going to impact your health. It's going to impact your children's health. They're going to have neurological problems. They're going to have gastrointestinal problems. All manner of problems come from a bad, a polluted, unsafe environment. And for many of the poor in the United States of America, that is what we have to confront. We have to confront the fact that factory stacks belching out pollutants, and those pollutants are in the air around our homes, around where we live. A lot of factories dump their waste in the ground, buried in the ground, or dump it, just plain dump it in the water source. And so all of those activities impact the people around that area, and for the bulk of the history of this nation, the people who had to put up with that have been people like, look at color of me, and other poor that were not able to live out in Montecito and all those kind of places. We had to stay here in South Central Los Angeles and put up with it. And so those things have to be remedied. Those the sociologists, thank God for the sociologists and the social workers, they have taught us a great lesson about the impact of your environment upon your family and upon you as a person. And that is why we are coming to you as we are, because we realize that whether you realize it or not, or have acknowledged it or not, you are impacted by your environment, place where you have to live. Where you live, a lot of times determine where you're going to go shopping, or where you're going to go find health care, or where you're going to go find to get your prescription filled, or where you're going to go to have some recreation, some fun. Yes, you got to have recreation. You got to have fun. Where you're going to go to church. And is it safe for your kids to walk back and forth to school? All of that is a part of the environment. So don't underestimate the environment in which you are living. Is there shooting in your area, in your neighborhood? Are there drugs? Are there a lot of liquor store proliferation? A lot of motel proliferation? Well, what are those going to bring? They're going to bring other elements into your area. And with those elements, they're going to bring the police, because every policeman wants to cut his teeth in South Central Los Angeles, want to get his badge of honor, badge of courage, as they say, trying to stop crime in South Central LA. And what they wind up doing is looking upon the whole community as it is a war zone. And so they'll shoot me, they'll shoot you, they'll shoot your baby, shoot all of us, and treat us scornfully, contemptibly when they stop us outside on the road. And sometimes it's not even outside on the road. Sometimes they'll come up on your front porch or in your house. All of these things create an unsafe environment. You may be more safer, have more public safety from the community, as what's that lady's name? Melina Abdullah said on yesterday. She's one of the professors out there at Cal State LA and teaches in the history and the sociological department, and she's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. Our scriptures for reparation, I missed to tell you also that this social justice must always include economics, because you live in a capitalistic system. Everything you do costs you money. Believe it or not, everything you do. Yes, you can breathe for free, but if you're going to do more than breathe, you're going to have to spend some money. I'm telling you. And so even the little old mask, that mask costs money. That mask is not free, and you got to keep changing that mask. Everything you do in a capitalistic system, there's a monetized component applied or attached to it at some point. Whether you see it or not, it's always right there. And yes, I'm a believer in economic justice, and that economic justice must always include reparations for past inequities, past wrongs, going all the way back into the 1619 when the first slave ships are supposed to have landed at Jamestown, and the first 20 slaves or 20 indentured servants were sold or were unloaded here in Jamestown, Virginia, off of the ship, the White Lion. And so the nation did not live up to its creed. It said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, but it meant all men. That meant we the people, which meant all men except black folks, except slaves, or except Indians. All men except women. Women are not included. And so that Constitution that was ratified subsequently there in not ratified. It was formed. It was codified in 1787, and they had an opportunity to set it right, but no, they chose to follow the road towards civil war, injustice, because liberty and slavery could not hang together. You cannot make a garment one side liberty and the other side slavery, which is what the founders sought to do. That's why they came up with what they call the 3/5 compromise, the Great Compromise, and as a result of that agreement, a covenant with death, as it were, it led the whole nation to continue on down the dark and desolate valley of slavery. It poisoned the minds of our white brothers and sisters, leading to what Paul said, their consciences were seared with a hot iron, because in order to justify slavery at the time when they were talking about all men are created equal, I mean, they had to say that a slave was no more than a piece of property. That's what they call chattel slavery, my personal property. My slave is my personal property. I looked upon a human being as a piece of property. And that's the way America came into existence. That's the way they approached it. And so, yes, you can see the inconsistency right there. It's the glaring inequity. It led to cognitive dissonance, because people had to meet you and not see you as a human being. They had to talk to you and not see you as a human being. And that is what they done to slaves. They reduced slaves to being less than human. In other words, they dehumanized a human being. They dehumanized a human being in order to justify their treatment. As a book you ought to get, this book right here called Less Than Human by David Livingston Smith. And it says why we demean, enslave, and exterminate others. Because remember, when slavery ended, we were still dehumanized, still looked upon as less than human. We had to step off the sidewalk when we were meeting white people on the sidewalk. We couldn't meet a white man's eyes. In Alabama, colored person that we were known then and a white person could not sit down and play checkers together. And that led to what? Separate schools and everything, separate water fountains, separate restroom. And when you died, you had to go to separate cemeteries, leading to a separate heaven and separate hell. And so you understand what this cognitive dissonance, it was an absurdity, but it prevailed. And when you listen to people like Donald Trump and his ilk, you find that it is still in vogue. The scripture says in Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 12, if thy brother, an Hebrew man, or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let them go free from thee. And when thou sendest them out free, thou shalt not let them go away empty, but thou shalt furnish them liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress. Of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto them. Because God was always on the side of the oppressed. And so you were not to turn a person out, as the United States of America did at the end of slavery in 1865, beginning actually in 1863 with the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation under Abraham Lincoln. The slave owners, the slave traders, the plantation owners, they got paid, yes, but the slave, no, slave didn't get paid. And so that inequity is still yet to be paid, yet to be reckoned with, yet that ledger has yet to be balanced. And yes, it must be balanced because there's too much labor on the table. Why, you wouldn't work 8 hours and don't get paid. Can you imagine working for kin to Kate? Because slave hours was far beyond 8 hours. Most of the slaves worked up to 16, 20 hours and only got a few hours to sleep and had to jump up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and get right back at it that next morning. So that's a lot of labor. That's a lot of hours. And remember, we talk about a 5-day work week, but the slave only got 1 day off if he got that 1 day, and that was Sunday. And so you look at all of that labor that was left there unpaid for at the end of 246 years of formal slavery. All they got was get out of the plantation. And nobody handed them a paycheck. Nobody handed them a voucher. Nobody handed them any money. They were, in other words, many of them penniless, no credit, no job, no house, nowhere to go, and no food, and all of that type of thing. And their wages were denied them. They did not receive their wages. Somebody saying, well, what about that 40 acres? What about that 40 acres? General Sherman, under Abraham Lincoln, issued Order Number 15, which allowed for a limited amount, 40 acres to the slaves. But as soon as Lincoln was assassinated and Andrew Johnson came in, he renounced that. He turned it around. He canceled that. And what the slaves were beginning to get, it was taken back from them and given right back to their former slave enslavers. And so that is the way that we got to where we are at this moment. Yes, because see, if you don't have nowhere to stay, you're in a terrible predicament. How you gonna get your mail? How somebody going to come by and visit you? How if you don't have nowhere to live? There's so many things that you are eliminated from having. You lose benefits. You lose advantage. You lose the advantage of having a stable living condition, stable living place. Unless I bore you or depress you, we're talking about what we don't have. Remember that on September 30th, right here in California, the Governor Newsom signed the first reparations task force committee, which is a committee to inform Californians about slavery and recommend ways the state can provide reparation. The committee will submit its findings no later than June 1st, 2023, and they will begin their task force will be empowered beginning in June 1st, 2021. So that is one move in the right direction right here in the state of California. And we have to thank Assemblywoman Shirley Weber, who represents the 79th District Assembly District down there in San Diego. But all of her legislation and bills that she writes, they benefit all of us all over this great state. And so that is a great move forward, and it will be a wonderful breath of fresh air to get this lie removed, this false narrative stopped, and begin to tell the actual story of things as they actually occurred. I was reading the Los Angeles Sentinel, and I want to thank a member of the what's the name of that? The CRL, the Center for Responsible Lending, one of their fellows who is affiliated with them. Her name is Charlene Crowell, and she had an article submitted to the Los Angeles Sentinel this week. And in that article was entitled "Closing the Racial Inequality Gaps," and the subtitle, "The Economic Cost of Black Inequality in the U.S." And that is a effort that is being sponsored by one of the big banks in this country, Citicorp. Can you imagine? One of the biggest big banks in the country, Citicorp, is looking into making an objective study of what does it cost the nation to keep up this inequality that has been going on since 1619. Remember, they didn't stop hating us after the Civil War. A lot of the Confederate soldiers became policemen and sheriffs and all that type of thing. And thousands upon thousands of our people were lynched, beaten, killed, murdered, driven out of their homes, driven out of their home states, and had to go find somewhere else. And a lot of times it was no better up north than it was down south, because down south the man let you know right off the bat he didn't like you. And in Chicago, they wait until you move in, then they start throwing rocks at your house and let you know they didn't want you in the neighborhood. So one was as bad as the other. I can testify to that. You can too. George Floyd was not killed in Mississippi. He was killed in Kenosha, in Minnesota. And all of the latest murders, the latest killings of our people at the hands of the police, at the hands of persons unknown, they have not occurred so much in the South. Brother Ahmaud Arbery was killed in Georgia, but a lot of our brothers and sisters, Breonna Taylor being the most salient example right now, she was not in Louisiana. No, she was right there in her own home state. Amen. Up north. And, well, Kentucky is not north. I got to take that back. Louisville, Kentucky. But Brother Ahmaud Arbery, Brother Boyd, and so many other, Eric Garner and so many others, they were killed, you know, in the northern states, New York, Chicago, and all like that. Minnesota, who would have thought that Minnesota would be such a haven of hatred against black people? But it is the case. It is the case. You have to admit it where it is. I say all of that because Citicorp is battling to close, analyzing and drawing up plans, and these plans that they are reviewing through the CRL, which is the Center for Responsive Lending, are doing an objective analysis of just how much does it cost for this systemic racism to continue. May I read just a bit of what they have to say? First of all, the people who work with Citicorp, this is what they say. It's the black people. The privileges we enjoy by working for Citi come with responsibilities. While elected officials and community activists must do their part, so must we. This is the people at Citicorp, black folks, who feel that they have a responsibility. And it says one important thing we can do is to show the cost of racial inequality through objective analysis, which is what the authors of this report have sought so effectively to demonstrate. Our overarching goal for the Citicorp series is not only to tackle the key opportunities and challenges of the 21st century, but also to address complex societal questions and to not shy away from difficult subjects. Isn't that beautiful? As such, we believe we have a responsibility to address current events and to frame them with an economic lens in order to highlight the real cost of long-standing discrimination against minority groups, especially against black people, and particularly in the United States. Remember that I told you this is a capitalistic society, and you may be breathing, but that breath is costing you. You have to pay for that every breath you take here in the United States. If you get a cup of water, you got to pay for that cup, and pay for the straw, and pay for the ice that goes in that cup to make that water cold. Isn't that something? And most of us in California are paying for 2 water systems. We drink bottled water because we're scared to drink the water out the tap. We got 2 water systems in our houses. And we're constantly paying through the nose. All right. Listen to what the report says. It says the analysis in the report that follows shows that if 4 key racial gaps for blacks, wages, education, housing, and investment had been closed back in 2000, $16 trillion, 16 trillion with a T, not a B and not an M, 16 trillion with a T dollars could have been added to the U.S. economy. And if the gaps are closed today, 5 trillion can be added to U.S. gross domestic product over the next 5 years. All right. And so the wealth gap, the inequality that is rampant in our culture, that's what we're talking about now, systemic racism, getting away from the use of the word institutionalized racism. We talk about a system rather than just one institution. We talk about a system in a bunch of institutions. Those institutions are housing, institutions of housing, real estate, your banking, your education, and of course your health care. And then of course the next one is food. Most of us, a lot of us are food challenged. And all of these things cost the nation far more than it is gaining. The nation would have been far better off if it had acknowledged the debt and took efforts and means, steps to correct that inequity way back yonder. Now it's going to cost over $52 trillion in order for black folks to be repaired so that everybody will have what they need to go forth in this society. All right, I already got my message to close up, wrap it up. But you think about that, how far behind the 8th ball we are. That could have been the 770,000 more black homeowners. I recommend you to look at this report. It's entitled Closing the Racial Inequality Gaps, the Economic Cost of Black Inequality in the U.S. God don't like ugly, and ain't that cap crazy about pretty. Remember our brothers and our sisters that are on the front lines, regardless of where those front lines are, whether they're in the hospital or whether they're driving a truck or whether they're a custodian or whether they're working in the supermarkets, or working in the rest home, working in the convalescent home, working in the clinic, working as a paramedic or EMT. Let us keep each other lifted up in prayer. I didn't have a chance to talk about President Trump coming down with the coronavirus. He claims he's cured, but we find about 18 of his people that have been around him since he got back from the hospital have come down with the coronavirus. But he still says he's not sick, but he's making everybody else around him sick. So please get your absentee ballot that has been sent out here in the state of California. Please fill that ballot out and get it back in time so that we can get this clown out of office. Amen. God bless. You're not supposed to give endorsements. But I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just saying make sure you vote right. You don't hear me. Next week we will deal with the proposition. And until I see you again, my brothers and sisters, keep the faith, stay upbeat, stay with God. Don't be foolish like Donald Trump, but hold on to God's unchanging hand. And remember, if you're working on one of these jobs where they don't want you to get good hours, they don't want you on that full time, they want to keep you part-time, they won't give you no set hours, they want you always on pins and needles, they might call you anytime to come to work. That's a sign that people really don't want to pay you. Get you a side hustle, get you something else to do so that you can tell those people, look, if you don't want to pay me, I ain't going to work for you no more. Thank you, Doc. We out.
I ask
Some question, Lord. Why so much pain? But He knows